Good morning, everybody. So, I know we're talking about social media. I want to spend a little time talking about the future of our country. But first, let me take you back to New York in 1798. Isn't that beautiful? 1 out of 20 New Yorkers died from yellow fever, but diphtheria, cholera, and tuberculosis were rampant. Back then, New Yorkers got their water from wells, most of which were contaminated. And even though science had yet to make the connection between the water and the epidemics, New Yorkers knew their city was filthy and that their tainted water made the epidemic worse. They were fed up, and the city council started working on a plan to bring fresh water from the rivers of the Bronx. But a state assembly member by the name of Aaron Burr, remember him? Proposed a private company be created and given sole water rights. And in fact, the Manhattan Company was incorporated, was given those exclusive water rights, but was also given the ability to engage in banking. And banking is what it did very, very well. And we see the legacy of that bank today in this logo. And for those of you who don't know that, that's actually a turnkey for a water valve from the turn of the 19th century. Some people in the mortgage industry, some people who have lost their mortgages now view that logo a little differently. But back to our story. As for bringing New York City fresh water, the Manhattan Company was less vested, so to say. They gave up the Bronx River plans as too expensive and instead decided to pull water from the Collect Pond, which was where Chinatown is today. And it was described by many people at the time as a shocking hole and a collection of all the leaking, scraping, scourings, pissings, and shittings for a great distance around. The city was estimated to need about 3 million gallons of water, but Manhattan Company's reservoir held about 132. Modern water systems around the world at the time used iron pipes and steam engines to drive their pumps. The Manhattan Company chose cheaper wood pipes and horsepower instead of steam power. For 30 years, New Yorkers continued to drink contaminated water. The rich could afford to build their own water tanks or buy water brought to the city in jugs, but most New Yorkers continued to drink out of contaminated wells. And there was no shortage of complaints. Even Brockholes Livingston, a former Manhattan Company director, wrote, "Inhabitants are drinking a proportion of their own evacuations as well as of that of their horses, cows, dogs, cats, and other putrid liquids so plentifully dispensed." And in spite of being universally reviled, the Manhattan Company wasn't going anywhere. Its political clout ran deep. So deep that Mayor DeWitt Clinton, who was also a major investor in the Manhattan Company, pushed a bill requiring that the city place all of its funds in the new bank. But then in 1832, a massive cholera epidemic hit the city. Half of New York City's population fled, and the other half, 4%, died. It would be the same today as if 150,000 New Yorkers were to perish. This time, though, New Yorkers weren't going to be messing around. Plans were started for a momentous water project that would bring water from the city's Croton River, 41 miles north of the city, and bring it to the city. In 1835, there was a fire, and the New Yorkers voted 17,000 to 5,000 to approve a public project to build the Croton Aqueduct, which you can see from that map, which I just showed you, and through these pipes, eventually arriving at a massive reservoir that was built in Central Park, where today's Great Lawn is, and a distribution reservoir. That's the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue where the New York City Public Library today stands. New Yorkers were, at that point, were consuming 100 gallons per capita per day, more than any other city on Earth. And two major things happened after the city decided to build that project. New York surpassed every other major city in the United States in size. People stopped dying. And I think it can be successfully argued that without clean water, New York would not have become the capital of the free world in the 20th century. Our forefathers had the vision in the 1840s and 50s to invest the equivalent of billions to plug the city into a vast supply of a vital resource that would help the city grow, keep people safe, and nourish them for decades, if not centuries. Now in the 21st century, we face a similar challenge, only the vital resource is digital. We were once the forerunner of delivering broadband service in the US, but now we've fallen to the middle of the pack. And many of my conservative friends will argue that the US market isn't really doing so badly. If you look at this map, you can see that the United States, by the color on the right, yellow, is sort of in the high zone related to other countries around the world. But this map hides another troubling fact, which is for high speeds, we are paying the highest price per megabit of any major industrialized country in the world. And that shouldn't be a surprise. Much like New York City in the early 1800s, we have left the delivery of broadband to what economists call a natural monopoly. In the case of broadband, it's actually a natural duopoly, with most competition between these cities' dueling cable and telephone companies. A duopoly is a market where there are just two sellers. Think of it this way: a beach with just two ice cream trucks. If they can keep out more competition, the best place for them to locate themselves is in the middle of the beach, next to each other. They can even charge the same price and offer the same quality of service. The duopoly is in their interest. If you look at this chart, this will show you how much money has been paid by telcos into our political system in order to kill open access, which they successfully did, as you see, spiked in 2000 and 2002. But instead of showing you more charts and graphs, let me just show you something a little more human. Michaela Rodriguez goes to art and design here in New York City. She gets online, if she's lucky, for about an hour a week at the computer lab at her school. And then she travels 3 hours a day, an hour and a half each way to go to a nonprofit called Camp Interactive in the Bronx. She lives in Queens, in order for her to be able to get herself online the rest of the time. I'd like to say to you that unless we solve, I don't know where the rest of it is, unless we solve the problem of the duopoly, we're not going to see a 21st century New York that will nourish our education system, our economic system, our innovation, and our generations and the generations of children that we hope for the best. It's a big problem. We can talk about social media all we want. We can talk about how technology is creating fantastic opportunities in journalism, in marketing, in politics. But until we solve the problem of getting visionary leaders who understand the connection between that duopoly and the future of our country, none of it's going to matter. Thank you very much.